Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your technical questions answered, and contribute to the community forum. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our construction, tech, or weekly Global Passive House Showcase webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh, coming to you from Auckland, New Zealand.
And I'm Zach Sempe, coming to you from Seattle, Washington.
And it's a busy time as normal, Zach, but how are things going for you?
They're going well. It is a very busy time. It's a crazy time in the world. So I've been, thinking about cultivating gratitude. So a couple of things I've been grateful for in the last 16 hours is the Seattle Sounders, my beloved football club, beat Club Leon but 3-0 last night, which was super exciting in the CONCACAF Championship League game. And then this morning, I listened to the interview on my iPhone and with my earbuds in, walking in the beautiful sunshine on a nice crisp day in late winter, early spring here in Seattle. So there's lots of fun stuff to cheer on and beauty to behold, even in even though there are some pretty dark things going on right now in the world.
That is true. I've been reflecting a little bit on the privilege of going out and doing exercise, going for a swim in the ocean, even just going to the pool, going to the gym. There's so much to be grateful for in having the ability to do that freely and being able to exercise is kind of a privilege. I think you're not having to just survive. Which a lot of people are going through right now. And we've been talking a lot, or there's been a lot here about the cost of living and inflation and those sorts of things, and bringing it back to housing. There's a bit of a conversation going on about whether we're in a crisis of cost of living, and I think some people have corrected me actually on online, some comments on LinkedIn. And I think that is absolute reality for some people of just cost of living is at crisis point. And it's hard to relate to that if you're relatively well off, as in sort of middle class, and food is, you've got food security, you've got choices. You got I complained about my house being a bit cold and drafty, but at the end of the day, it's a house and we're secure, and there are some people just who don't even have that. So, not entirely sure where I'm going with that, but I think coming back to Passive House, we often talk about Passive Houses as being available, should be available to everyone, and I think there's a lot of hope for it to be available to everyone, not just people who are in the fortunate position of having a beautiful home, but it's a really great solution for all types. But there are some people who are in desperate need of just decent housing around the world.
Indeed. Yeah.
All right, we've got some stuff to get into. Another great interview this week with a good friend of mine here, builder in Auckland. But before we do that, let's thank our sponsors really quick.
Yes, let's do. So thank you to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingui Architects, Glavel Foam Glass Gravel, Minitaire All-in-One HVAC and Dehumidification Units, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, Rockwell North America, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. Thanks also to our champion sponsors, Icon Windows and Doors, Proseco, and SIGA. And thanks to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority.
Awesome. Now, speaking of corrections, we've got a correction.
Right.
I've got a correction.
Well, I think it's a shared correction.
I have been corrected, and I really appreciate, because if I'm going to be corrected, I would like to be corrected by none other than Jason Quinn, who I hold in very high regard. But in listening to last week's episode, Jason quite rightly picked up on a technical comment that I made about the relationship between accidental airtightness and making buildings accidentally airtight. And I alluded to or said that that was a cause of internal moisture or internal mold issues. And I'll read, Jason wrote, and this is what he said. This is not true. It is true that low or no or poor ventilation does contribute to really high internal moisture loads, but making a building leaky, as defined by an air change rate of a high air change rate, does not correlate to better ventilation, which I absolutely agree with. And he goes on to cite Dr. Cara Rosemeyer, who I often actually share her research with people in making this very point. So I'm very embarrassed and great, but also grateful for Jason to raise this. Cara did some great research to show that natural ventilation, which is similar to just general leakiness, is not adequate for ventilation. She did it specifically in New Zealand, but it would be true for pretty much most climates around the world, that you can't rely on natural ventilation alone or building leakiness. And leakiness itself is not ventilation. So the main point here was that you always need good ventilation, and ideally, the best solution for that is usually some form of whole house mechanical ventilation, and ideally with heat recovery. That should be the primary feature or design feature to combat the risk or reduce the risk of internal mold. So that, and what Jason's basically saying here is we shouldn't correlate air tightness with alone with the increasing risk of mold issues. Have I got that right?
I think so. Yes, and well handled, and thank you, Jason, for the correction.
Yeah. Oh, he also goes on to say that, citing that people talking about walls breathing, and that's something else I also agree with. Again, I quote: "I know this sounds like tech trivia, but it is even worse than saying walls breathe when discussing wall vapor transmittance levels through diffusion." And again, totally agree with that. That's something that we want to avoid in talking about the science of air tightness, the importance of ventilation, and how it all works together.
Right. Walls don't need to breathe; they need to sweat. This one is
something like that. I liken it to transpiration, which is what your skin does.
There you go. That's better.
Allowing moisture through. But if your skin was not airtight and breathed, then you would have problems. You don't want air to be flowing through freely through your skin. Anyway, thank you for that, Jason. And also, we always appreciate getting comments and feedback. So please, if you do pick up anything, or if you want to ask any questions or give suggestions, please do get in touch. And you can do that by email, podcast@passivehouseaccelerator.com. We'd love to hear from you. All right, let's get on to this week's interview. I caught up with Toby Tilsley this week, and If you're in New Zealand, if you're listening to us from New Zealand, there's a good chance you would have you'll know Toby, or you will have heard him speak at a conference, or seen some of his work. He is the director of Craft Homes, and well, he's actually based in Raglan now, which is an awesome little place just an hour and a half out of Auckland. He's a passive house tradesperson. He's also a homestyle practitioner and a licensed building practitioner, and he has built up Craft Homes to be a smallish but growing building company, and is focusing on some very high quality and mostly passive house buildings, as he'll go on to explain in this chat. He's just finishing up a very impressive building here in Auckland, but getting more and more interest from around the place. So here he is. Here's my chat with Toby of Craft Homes. Thank you, Toby, for your time. Really appreciate. I know that you're a busy man, like a lot of people in the building industry here at the moment. For those listening who aren't familiar with where you are, how do you describe? Well, tell us where you are and how do you describe it?
So well, thanks for having me anyway, Matt. We're currently in Raglan, so we purchased some land down here a year ago now. It's actually been just over a year. And I guess spending 12 years in Auckland, we were looking for a place where we could bring up our children and try and meet somewhere in the middle so we could be closer to family, but still be not too far away that I could still run my business. And so, yeah, we live about 5-minute drive from Ruapuki Beach in Raglan, and so yeah, it's awesome. We're loving it.
So west coast, pretty rugged, but great surfing.
Yeah, great surfing. Yep. Yeah, that's prerequisite. I think that was one of the biggest things that we thought, if we could get our kids into surfing and the outdoors, then yeah, it's a game changer.
So the idea is to have that lifestyle, go back to that, return to that each day, but you're still, a lot of your work is in around central Auckland.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, pretty much. So we've got a really good team in Auckland, so it's not my job. My job now is pricing work, talking with clients, and just the general overseeing of the projects, but most of our work currently is in Auckland, and people are starting to hear about us down here in Raglan, and so a result of that is Casper Valentine, who built the first certified passive house in New Zealand. He's built a passive house in Waitatuna? I think it's Waitatuna. That's sort of towards Hamilton. And he's now building a new passive house on Ruapuki Road, which is on the same road as what we live on. He's asked me to build it. So
nice.
Yeah, nice. So we're looking at doing that for him as well. So that'll be quite cool. I thought it's only like literally a minute drive from our house. So it was a no-brainer. Had to do it.
How did you get into building in the first place?
I sort of started building later in life, really. I did my apprenticeship when I was 27. I spent a number of years overseas, but primarily my work was dagging sheep, working in the forestry and the silviculture and harvesting sector, and farm fencing. So working in England for 4 years fencing, working in New Zealand in the forestry down in Bulls, Santoff Forest, where I was a tree harvester. And but my family grew up in the King Country, and we Just we've worked on farms pretty much our entire life. So yeah, just as a result of that, it was a lot of hard graft.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just when I met Katrina in Australia, we spent a lot of time travelling around, and she found a job in Auckland in 2008. And it was obviously in the middle of a recession. It wasn't really the best time for me to be looking for work, but it was an opportunity, and I was looking for something that was a little bit less, well, what's the best word? I guess it wasn't as hard on the body, and I thought building was going to be something that would be a bit easier on me, and it was going to keep my brain active. So that's where it all started. So I started looking for work in 2008 in a recession in Auckland.
Yeah.
And the guy basically gave me a job after walking the streets of Auckland for a number of months looking for work, as no one had any work at that time. So yeah, I was grateful he gave me an apprenticeship, and
different world
that
back
was
then.
It really. Yeah, it was.
And how would you say that has played out in terms of physically? Do you think you're not as much on the tools now? You got a bit of a team, but do you see that is building something that you can carry on doing?
Oh, definitely, yeah. There's so much variety in building. It changes every day. That's what I love about it. It's not the same. And what we do now is even better again. It's just there's so much more that goes into it, and it really keeps you on your feet. And that's what I love about Passive House, is that it's just so intricate, and every job is very different. But just building in general, I mean, I just like the interaction with my clients. I like the staff interaction, and everybody's different, and it's just the managing of people. That's the thing that I really like about the building industry.
And you don't find, you mentioned forestry, fencing, working on the farm. You don't, is building physically sustainable for you? Is it a young man's game?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? I guess there's a lot required as a builder at the moment. People are expecting a lot from us, so you have to be commercially competent. It's demanding. It is demanding, but I still think it's doable. I still believe that me, as a 40-year-old, I think I've still got at least another 15 years of solid graft, keeping up with the way the market's, what it's requiring of us.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily a young man's game. You can still do it. It's just about being efficient.
Yeah. And I like that idea of enjoying the experience with clients and your team as well. I think sometimes, it can happen in any trade, in any occupation, any profession, where it can be seen as stressful and they're being bad players, but it doesn't have to be that way. And there's such a big opportunity to have an amazing relationship. I mean, you're potentially going to be a huge part of someone's life if you're building their dream home or their last home or their first home or whatever it might be. Somewhere for them to bring their family up in, somewhere to really be themselves, become themselves. You play quite an important role in someone's life potentially.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, and I mean, you spend, the good part of 8 to over a year with these people, talking about what's important for them for the remainder of their life, or, as it turns out, a lot of people that I do work for, we tend to be building homes for people that have maybe come into retirement. They're selling their last home, and they want us to build them their last home that they want to reside in. And so it's really important, and particularly if you're building an environmental home or you're a passive house, for example. It's so it's holistic. We have to look at it from so many different angles. And we're really involved. Really involved.
Do you remember when you first heard about Passive House?
I know. I just finished doing my Homestar course, and it was just something that just came up, and it was just I was really fascinated about the sustainable side of construction. And I just finished my Homestar course. I had a couple of jobs lined up, doing a renovation in Remuera, and for myself as an asthmatic, indoor air environment was really important to me. And so this particular client had children with really bad asthma. And so this is when I had engaged with Murray Durbin from Enveloped, and we had contracted him to install a mechanical ventilation heat recovery unit into this home.
Yep.
And Murray, we just got talking, and Murray's obviously had built the Ideal House in Auckland, and that's where it really kicked off for me. Actually, the super home movement were doing tours, and I went to the Ideal House, and obviously got to meet Murray again, and it's just sort of it just escalated, and I started to meet more and more people that were in that space, and that. It was just awesome. It was just something really different than what I was used to doing. And, I haven't really looked back since, really. That was just definitely the drive for me to push into that sort of area where we were building healthy, energy-efficient homes.
I think the Ideal House has been quite instrumental in showing people what a passive house can be. It wasn't the first one in Auckland, but it was by virtue of Murray opening it up and Leanne doing work with Homestar, because it was Homestar rated and it was passive house. And they had quite a few open homes, so they took quite a few people through there. So I think a lot of people have been introduced to passive house via Murray and via the Ideal House. Do you remember? Was there anything about that house walking into it that you recall that kind of felt different, or that made an impression on you?
Yeah, I think I actually felt that I came out of there feeling quite dry, and that was just an observation. I felt it was the air was very different in there, and for me as an asthmatic, I really noticed it. Because we were there for, I don't know, probably the good part of an hour, sitting in the kitchen, and Leanne and Murray were talking about it. And I did feel I personally felt different. The breathing in there, I just felt it was a lot cleaner and it was clearer.
Yeah, right.
There was just a real constant temperature in every room. There was no sort of change in temperature anywhere. You could go into every room and it was the same. That was, like typically in a normal standard building code home, you'd walk into a room and it'd be a different temperature. Whereas you walk around his house, upstairs, downstairs, any room, it was all the same.
Yeah.
So that was something I initially realised straight away. I was like, man, this is really different. This is good.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. And it's really light and airy design as well. It's sort of quite open and just very light and fresh inside. I definitely get that contrast in my house, which is pretty old. In the summertime, particularly where I am now, I'm downstairs kind of in the basement basically, and I walk up the stairs in the middle of the day and it's 2-3 degrees difference just walking up the stairs, and it's noticeable. And every time that happens, I think this can't be good. It's not. It's not really working to have that massive temperature difference. And of course, it's way worse in a lot of houses in wintertime when you have bedrooms that are a few degrees colder than the lounge room, and certainly colder than what would be optimal.
Yeah,
and damper as well. You mentioned that the dryness. We have such high humidity, and that causes lots of issues as well.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So you were sort of introduced through some equipment, mechanical ventilation systems, and then some concepts. I'm always interested to hear what people's perceptions of airtightness when they first hear about Passive House? Did you have any reservations about that?
Yeah, so I guess I didn't. I guess I understood why the home needed to be airtight. So for me, I sort of thought about and understood why the home needed to be airtight. So I'm just talking back at the initial stages here.
Yeah.
It was different for clients when I talked about airtightness, but for myself, I sort of understood that if you had an airtight home, it would make everything else a lot easier to control. But yeah, I mean, a lot of other people that I talked to, they felt like they were claustrophobic, or they made comments around, oh, no, I like opening my windows, and this whole idea of being airtight seems a bit strange. But yeah, I guess over time now that we've built quite a few high performance homes and a passive house, etc., it's sort of now we can show people through these homes, and they can come and actually touch and feel and sort of understand what it's like and how and explain to them why we make them airtight. But yeah, I personally, I didn't think much of it. I thought it was all good. Yeah, I totally understood it.
Is that generally how that conversation goes now? Do you just try and take people in and show them if they've got questions about that, or if they've got concerns? Yeah. Are there things that you talk them through? What do you say, or is it just simply a matter of taking them to a passive house and say, look, come and see it?
Yeah, that's the beauty of having done a few now. I can actually, and having them at different stages. So as the inquiries come, we have the opportunity now to actually take people to the house and show them. That's now the best way I find to explain airtightness to people. I can take them and show them and explain to them then why and what we do. That's the best way now, I think, with any of these types of homes for people to come and actually see it at different stages. So that's a good part of the selling point of it, because it sort of eliminates a lot of questions when people question things, and you sort of say to them, this is what we need to do to the walls, this is what's required, this is how much it's going to cost. When they can actually come to site and see it, they go, oh, wow, yeah, that's quite a lot of work. But then you explain to them and say, well, this is why we're doing it. And then they totally get it. It's so much easier for people to see things rather than just talk them through it. I find that people need to see. They don't want to be told. It's better. Yeah. It's much better to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if that answers the question. Yeah.
Absolutely. Are people coming to you now because they know what you do, or do you still get people who just like the look of what you've done, and then you're having to convince them and educate them about Passive House?
That's a good question, actually. I think it's a combination of the two. So it definitely is a combination of the two. We've got people who are very passionate about Passive House. They already know about it. Mm-hmm. So, I sometimes talk to people and they know more than I do. It's sort of like they've
done their research.
Yeah, they've done their research. They're really in depth with it. It's cool. And those tend to be some of the best clients because they know what they want. But then again, I'm just thinking of a couple of occasions just recently, actually, people wanted to have, they liked the idea of a passive house, but they didn't understand why they needed to go the full hog. Do we need to have thermally broken airtight joinery, German joinery, or wherever it's coming from? Can we not just can we use New Zealand joinery? Do we have to have service cavities? Do we have to do this? Do we have to, they're trying to cut corners, save money. And so then I have to have that conversation around, in order to make this house work, we actually have to put all these components together to make it work. We can't just do one and miss the other two.
Yeah.
So that is another conversation again with clients, is trying to get them to go the whole hog, and then it comes down to the next conversation. Then we have to price it up, and then it becomes a cost issue, and then it can be quite complicated, and particularly when they've got their sights set on how big their house needs to be, and so you sort of say, well, can I make a suggestion and say, can we try and reduce your house so that we can get this all in on budget? And then then it might be a make or break. It might be just non-negotiable for them. They need to have a certain size home, or if you know what I mean. It can be it's a tricky conversation. With these people who aren't quite convinced.
And I'm assuming that because you as the builder, do you find that you have some influence in those types of decisions? Are you having to have a three-way conversation with the architect there as well?
Yeah, definitely. So the designer, normally now, we try and use designers who are, if they're certified passive house designers, it definitely helps. And so it makes everyone's work a lot easier if we're all on the same page.
Absolutely.
It's actually, it's hands down so much easier. But look, it's not just my job, but I do find that clients come to me first, and it's normally the client comes to the builder, then I put them on to the designer, and then we work at it collaboratively to make it all work. And so, but it's not, like I say, it's not my job. I mean, the certified designer is right up to speed with it, particularly if they know they do all their own thermal modelling, etc. So that helps me. It sort of backs me up, and I can back him up, and we work on it together.
I would suggest that that's part of what makes you a good builder, because that's fairly common. I think that it comes back to that relationship that you're on site. These people, you're talking with them pretty much every day for 9 months to a year. They're going to come to you. I think what makes you stand out among other not so good builders is that you then are happy to have that conversation and also involve the architect when necessary. And I've heard lots of stories of the builder kind of using that power that they have, that influence, to say to the client, no, you don't need to do this, and almost undermining the architect. And I think the way you describe that, having them on board and having an open conversation, having an understanding, a technical understanding, is a way more positive way of going. It's definitely going to get a better outcome to doing that way.
Definitely. Yeah, it's hands down. Everybody needs to be on the same page. It's and
I guess there's an element of ego in there as well, and I get the sense that your motivation is to get a good outcome and to get a good building. It's not to be the one who's got all the answers and knows what's best all the time. Right.
And it's important too that we have the correct information on the drawings. So if something's missing on the drawings, we also have to be very careful about price and timeline as well. So it's really important that we give the clients a price that's, if we're going to give them an estimate or we're going to give them a fixed price, which, it's a bit hard at the moment, but if we say that this is what it's going to cost, we've got to be there and thereabouts. We can't be 20 or 30% out. We have to get it right. So in order to do that, we have to make sure that the designer has provided us enough information. That's why it's so important that the designer has the right detail around junctions, around where internal walls meet external walls. They show the interlaps, or however you're building the home, whether it's a SIPS home, etc. We have to have the detail on the plan so that there's no questions later on or no variations that will occur. So
Yeah.
We don't want to have to go back to the architect and say, hey, there's no detail for this. Can you draw us a detail? Then we have to reprice it, and then it becomes a cost increase. We need to sort of cross that off early. We need to get all these variations out of the way before you even start the job. You don't want to come in later on at the third hour with a whole load of variations, and then the client's just looking at you saying, well, we engaged you because you've done this before, you know what you're doing, and so this is where we're at now. As a company, we need to make sure that we're providing our client the best set of drawings with the most amount of knowledge, so that we don't have price increases. We sort of, this is the price and this is where we think it's going to end up.
How are you dealing with that right now when we've got such high inflation and also cost of materials? I mean, I don't know how you nail those down, because they're changing from month to month, and you half the stuff you can't even get hold of at the moment. So how are you dealing with fixed cost pricing and just pricing in general?
Yeah, it's a good one, isn't it? I mean, it's a bit of a shambles, isn't it? So we're not really, we're doing a bit of a, what's the word? It's sort of a bit of a fixed price charge up scenario. So it's not, we can't entirely say this is what the fixed price is going to be, because we can't provide that information. We don't want to put a huge margin on there to say, look, we're just going to cover our ass.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that we can actually, this is, you might lose the job, for example, but then you also don't want to rip them off either. You don't want to say this is what the price of timbers might be in a year's time. So what we're saying is this is the estimated price for the material, and thankfully our subcontractors we've been working with now for a long time now, and they know our jobs. They've got familiar with how we do things, and they understand. And so what we do is we engage with our subcontractors. We say that, yes, this is only a 30-day quote. It's only valid for 30 days. But the process in getting through council from the preliminary drawings right through to consent documents could be 3 months. So that 30-day quote that you've got back at the preliminary stage might be way out, because as you know, things have gone up in the last couple of months. But what we've sort of said to people is, look, can we, and I guess it comes down to me understanding the client, and it's sort of knowing that they've come to me, we know we're going to be doing the job. Yes, we don't have a contract signed, but we know we're going to get the job. So let's just, it seems a bit strange saying that, but if we order something or we get a quote at the preliminary stage, we actually we order it. We order the material. We say, this is the price. This is going to, if you think this is going to go up, this is me talking to the subcontractor. We say, oh, look, this is going to go up. Is it going to be a good idea that we just buy it now? And then if we don't buy it now, would you be able to on-sell it on your next job? Or maybe I could take it and use it on the next job. But we actually go ahead and order it. So when we do provide that preliminary budget, we've taken all these factors into consideration with the subcontractors. We've ordered all the material because we already are 80 to 90% guaranteed to be doing the work anyway. And so that's one way for us at the moment to actually be able to provide a price to our client that is actually a little bit more realistic, if you know what I mean.
But also back to what you were saying before about just kind of good commercial sense and having a bit of cash flow, being able to kind of hedge a little bit on some of those supplies. So it sounds like there's no silver bullet there. It's just kind of good business management, but also having good relationships with people.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it is. It's and I mean, the clients do. So far, they may have already sold their home, or they've got a bit of cash up their sleeve. So we have this conversation early on. Again, it's just collaborative. It's just about having these conversations early. This is a situation. If you really want to hold these numbers, we're going to have to purchase it, and so I might ask you for some money. And so it's just a trust thing. It really is trust. It's ordering the gear up front, and that's what we've done. We're building a passive house up in Warkworth. We've started, but we pretty much ordered the entire house lot of material, and even the subcontractors right down to the lighting, the flooring, all the plumbing gear, everything. We've ordered the whole lot. So if it's comes early, we just hold on to it. I store it down here in Raglan. It might be, or I store it on site. So it just depends how we go about it. But we try our best to get things ordered as early as we possibly can to stop any sort of crazy cost fluctuations.
How much of your stuff, like if you order a house load of stuff like that right now, how much of it is coming from overseas?
So another way, I suppose I should mention too that a lot of our homes currently we've done with SIPS panels because they come from Christchurch, they're manufactured in New Zealand now, and so we can pre-assemble them in a controlled environment too. So we've set up a yard down here in Raglan with a gantry, and so we pre-assemble all our walls here, and then we truck them up to Auckland. So
nice.
That's been a bit of a game changer, and I guess when we talk about ordering all the walls and everything, that takes care of the roof and walls. So most of the material that comes from overseas is more the mechanical stuff, the windows, etc. The windows, for example, we order that again early. That's probably the first thing that I do now is work on the windows, get the rebates, the floor recesses right, work with the people in Germany, and we order them as soon as we possibly can, 9 times out of 10 before consent documents have been issued. And yeah.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a leap of faith there as well. But I imagine that comes back to what we were talking about before, that trust and having clients that are fairly committed.
Yeah, correct. Yep, that's exactly it. It's just
And so you're still predominantly using windows and joinery hardware from Europe?
Yes, yep. Pretty much every house I'm working on at the moment has European joinery.
Are you seeing, or have you seen any stuff more locally? Can you imagine yourself using stuff that's fabricated locally in the future?
Yeah, so I do hope that New Zealand gets on board with the joinery. I haven't really seen it yet, but there is a company down here in Hamilton who has a recessed flashing detail for New Zealand made joinery. Now I'm not 100%. I haven't used the system yet, but I have. Eurotect is the name of the company, and they do a recessed flashing detail for New Zealand joinery. So, but in saying that, New Zealand joinery is not made to be airtight, so it's missing a few things there.
Yeah.
When it comes to making the home airtight, yes, we can recess it in the wall, but I pretty much guarantee you we can't make it airtight. So it might be something. That might be something that might be happening moving forward. Maybe these joinery companies can make them airtight. But currently, that's something that I do know of at the moment. That's happening over here in New Zealand.
Yeah.
But still, I think we're a pretty long way away. It just seems like nothing's really moving in that space. I've not heard anything about a New Zealand joinery. I mean, there's obviously Thermadura and all the other companies that are building these high performance windows, eco windows, etc. So, but a lot of those windows are coming from Germany.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
So, it's a space that needs to be filled.
Yeah. What other trends do you see if you look forward, say, 3 to 5 years in New Zealand? What do you see the building industry looking like in that time frame?
Oh man, if the last 20 years is anything to go by, I'm not sure. But
Yeah.
um, oh, I hope that we do start to see a good change. I mean, already in the last 5 years, the inquiries for environmental homes, passive house, passive solar, passive house, for me and my company, because we've sort of been in that space for a while now, the amount of leads that are coming through has increased dramatically. Like we had 9 new home inquiries in 14 days in January. So that tells me
Wow.
that there's a huge interest for it now. So
Yeah.
it's now hopefully trying to find a way to actually get these built, because I don't want to be saying to people, sorry, I'm booked up for the next 2 to 5 years. I just can't build your house. We need more builders doing this, getting in this space, so that we can cater for all these people that are wanting to build this way. But
how many teams have you got? You just got the one team? You're doing one house at a time at the moment?
no, we do 2. So we're giving the big passive house at the moment a really big push. So we've got our entire team on there. I think we've got about 16 staff now in total, but we've got 10,
Wow.
10 builders. So they're all on that house at the moment, just to give it their final push, so we can move on to the next jobs. Yeah. So.
And is this kind of at that stage where you have to think about whether you want to step up your company to another level, or can you kind of incrementally grow it a person at a time?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? It's not the sort of thing you can just. There's a lot of time training our guys to get them to understand what we do and how we do it.
Yeah.
You can't just go and get any old builder that's been building for 20 or 30 years the old way and bring them on board, because the management required is huge. It's not.
Yeah.
We have to be quite frank with you, I think I'd prefer to take on new BCITO guys, train them up.
Yep.
I think that's been the big thing for me this year, is the observation around what it takes to do these homes. We don't want people coming in at the third hour telling us how to build a house. We want to be able to say to our builders, actually, this is how we do things. You're going to have to take a step back and actually re-educate yourself.
Yeah. Well, recess windows would be a prime example of that.
It's a prime
guarantee
example,
that if they've gone through any standard training, they would have been taught to hang a window on the outside of the building and let it all drain out down the cavity.
Yeah, it's it.
And you have to sort of retrain them on that whole process.
Correct. Yeah. We've decided this year that we're just going to train, because we've done, the last 3 or 4 years building passive house high performance homes. We've our team now are quite up to speed. They've installed 3 houses or 3 homes of European joinery. They know what it takes to do these types of homes. So now these guys can train the new entry people coming into the company. So I feel like the last 3 years has just been one big learning curve for everybody. But now we're at the stage now we've got the team who can train the new guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, before we wrap up, we should do a bit of a plug, because you've got some great resources, information on your website, but you've also been busy creating some documentaries. Do you want to tell us a little bit about those? Yeah,
that's I didn't think I'd ever be doing a documentary, but we just thought that we were building this house down here in Raglan. We're building an off-grid passive house. We currently live in off-grid right now, actually. But we just thought we'd open it up as a show home for people who want to come and understand how to live sustainably, how to live, if they're interested in living off-grid. We can show people how to do it, what to do. But we thought a passive house was the perfect type of home to be living off grid. It's got low energy. The heating and cooling loads that are required are very low. And so we thought, why not just do a documentary? So, yeah, it's quite exciting, actually. We've had Aaron Burrell. He's been involved. We've got Bob Burnett from the Super Home Movement. We're hoping to include Oculus Pro Climber.
Nice.
And just and also Catherine Leitner, of all people, CEO of Asthma New Zealand. She's had a really huge input into our documentary, talking about respiratory illness and why we need to be living this type of way. We talk with Formants from Christchurch. We talk about prefabrication, how we think prefabricated homes are going to be the new way to build homes if we're trying to I guess it's not just prefabrication is, I think, a good way to build a home in a controlled environment so we can keep it away from weather elements. But I think long term, trying to build healthy homes for the lower income earners, for people who want to build, we're not saying, passive house is slightly more expensive because there's a little bit more that goes into it, but we would like to come up with a way that we can build passive house for people at the first home sort of at that level. And so I personally think that prefabrication is going to be a big part of that, and we just have to make it a lot simpler and a lot more affordable for people at that lower end, because that's where it's all starting to escalate and get out of hand. Unfortunately, these types of homes are what we need those people to be living in. It shouldn't be for people who have lots of money. It needs to be for everyone.
Yeah.
So we talk a bit about that.
For everyone.
Yeah, we've got that going on in the documentary, and it's exciting.
It is exciting indeed. Hey, well, thank you, Toby, for your time today, but also thank you for all the great work that you've been doing. I think it's really inspiring seeing your journey, starting with Homestar and then looking further, getting really into Passive House, and then now doing what you're doing now and continuing with that. I think that's a really, really great vision to look at how you can help those amazing, beautiful Auckland houses that you're building, those last homes, but also looking at the other end of the spectrum of that huge need for affordable homes that are also decent, good quality, healthy places to be. So thank you. Thanks for your time today. And we will look forward to keeping in touch, seeing your progress.
Nice one, Matt. Thanks for your time.
Toby Tilsley there of Craft Homes. He's hanging out in Raglan. It's a great place to be, and doing a lot of work in and around Auckland, but also more and more across the whole North Island now. Really great to catch up with Toby. I've got a lot of time for him. I really like stories like his of a builder who has come to Passive House at some stage in the game and just really embraced it and seen the benefits of it, and now really encourages others to go in that direction. What did you think, Zach?
Oh, I loved this interview. Toby's really it actually, I actually had kind of an intense experience listening to this. Honestly, I haven't shared this with you yet. But when you brought
it back to your Hammerhand days.
No, actually, it goes further back. So you were asking Toby about it. Is this a young man's game? And he was responding to that and reflecting on the fact that he's 40 and he's got he has some years ahead of him with building. And no, it brought me back to memories of my dad. And it's funny because I'm older than Toby, so it's a little bit. But the reason it reminded me of my dad is so my dad was a builder for his whole life, master craftsman. And when Toby was talking about the connection with the families or the people that he's building the homes for, and kind of how his this deep sense of responsibility I think he feels, understanding how important that role is, and all that was resonating. And also just like, so my dad died young. He was 54 when he died. It was in 1999. It's been a long time. So, but he was also grappling. He did passive solar stuff in the 70s and the 80s. Yeah. He also helped get a small wind turbine on the small town school that I went to, and he was always dabbling in that kind of stuff. And near the end of his life, he was recognizing, and he died suddenly, so it wasn't, that was. But near the end there, he was making a pivot to design, because he was in his early 50s, and it was time to make that shift. And so I was just thinking about, like, imagining, as I was listening to Toby and kind of relating to my dad Dick, how cool it would be to see him make the pivot to Passive House at that, Passive House came a little too late for him. And so I was just thinking about that people like Toby now have this like Toby's going to be able to make a cool pivot to something else related to Passive House when the time is right. But that's not for a long time for him. So anyway, that's probably a little bit too much about me and my history, but I was sometimes I get really all these memories about my dad come back to me, and it can be kind of like emotionally intense. And I had that experience when I was listening to Toby. So I kind of really related to that in a surprise, like a way that I was surprised by.
I like hearing stories about master craftsmen, master craftspeople, and finding, and in some cases refinding that passion for what they do or what they have done in the past. So I really like that story, because I think about my dad too, and the fact that he wanted to be a carpenter but ended up being a motor mechanic through a series of events, but we always had woodworking tools at home, and would always be fixing stuff in the shed, and now he's retired, but he still loves fixing stuff. And I've seen this in builders who do come across Passive House, and that may have been worn down by building standard homes and just by the work of doing building and everything that goes along with it, and just churning out houses. But then in discovering Passive House, as Toby alluded to, quite often you come across clients who are really well educated and they know what they want. You kind of get this opportunity, or they get this opportunity, to work with someone who really appreciates quality and appreciates what you do. And I've seen kind of the eyes of older builders just sparkling with a newfound passion for what they do, because it kind of takes them back to why they picked up a hammer in the first place, was to create something good, and to something that they could step back at the end of the project and be really proud of. And I think Passive House gives that to builders, because they honestly know that it's a good, healthy thing, and they're contributing positively to someone's immediate life, but also leaving a really cool legacy. And that's got to be better than just churning out another one of many code compliant houses out in a suburban big block development somewhere, and it just becomes, I can imagine that becoming just hard graft and not very rewarding. So I do see that. The other thing I guess that stood out for me with Toby was how he's become a business manager through just through running a good business, and the importance of running a good business. But a lot of that seems to be about relationships with his clients, with his the specialist trades that he uses, suppliers, all those sorts of things. But that's not it's a significant business that he's got going there. I mean, we say it's a small, medium business, but having 10, 15 guys that you're in your team, all relying on everything running smoothly, that's an impressive feat. and it's a really cool thing to do. And again, if you're able to train those people and give them that experience of building things and creating things that they're all proud of, I think that's a great thing to be building in the real world, but also building as a business.
Definitely. And it was fun to hear this creativity around to figure out how to deal with cost escalation and inflation, and to bring a little bit more certainty to the process for the people he's working with or working.
Yeah, that's such an issue at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, another story where asthma and indoor air quality ends up being an entree or kind of the entry point to Passive House. That clearly was a key piece as he was thinking about what is a healthy house, what's an environmental house. I think he used that term a couple of times. And I hadn't heard about the ideal house. I mean, that's pretty.
We probably need to get Murray Durbin on the show at some stage. The ideal house is actually one of the only passive houses in around Auckland that's been sold. That certainly wasn't the intention,
right?
Because most people that build a passive house don't want to sell it because they don't want to move. But
exactly.
Murray had the opportunity and his family to actually sell the ideal house, but there's still a lot of information available about it, so we could put some links up to that. But it's a very cool building designed by Matt Wilson here in Auckland.
Nice.
There was one other thing I just wanted to ask about when Toby talked about recessed windows. What does that mean for you?
Well, I think that there's the same issue with the standard practice being, windows out to the face of the building,
right?
And recessed windows being the go-to solution for passive house performance.
Yeah. Cool. No, I just wasn't sure whether that was a unique thing because we had the whole leaky building thing here, and so that seems to trump everything else right now in terms of compliance and people's concern about keeping the water out. And so we've still got this default of having windows that are outside of the insulation plane of the wall, so that when inevitably they leak, because they're not very good quality, they leak out away from the internal framing and down a cavity ideally. So it's sort of designing and building houses to fail.
Well, I mean, good. I mean, I think this best construction practice is to assume that the windows will someday leak. I think that was you mentioned hammer and hand. So back to hammer and hand. That was the assumption. Not to and maybe rightly so, maybe wrongly so, but the assumption was all the windows are going to leak regardless of how great they are. Was that builder's approach was that the approach there. So let's make sure that we are figuring out the window openings and how the detailing works and how the moisture management, the water management works, so that the water is going to flow out. And we can do place the window in midway in that the window opening still, so that it's compliant with best building performance practice, but ensure that it's going to be durable and we're not going to have building failure if a window fails. Yeah.
So I'm pleased that we're learning to do that better here, and it's still work because Toby knows how to do it and some of the architects he works with know how to do it doesn't mean all of our councils and all of our building inspectors know about it and how to address their concern of water draining in the right way. So it can be done, and it is being done, but it still means that people like Toby have to have that conversation over and over again.
Right.
Which I'm very grateful for them doing that, and for other people who are doing things for the first time in whatever region they're doing them in.
Yeah, and you were right to raise the power that builders have in this whole process, and how important it is. What a important proactive role that people like Toby are making in the process.
Clients tend to really trust builders.
Yeah.
All righty. Let's talk about what else is going on in Passive House world.
Let's do. I just want to say one thing, and that is I'm really looking forward to watching that documentary. So that sounded great.
True. Yeah, we'll post some links to that as well. But you can find them on if you just look up Craft Homes. He's got a tab there on the website. You can look up a couple of the episodes already.
Yeah, fantastic. Cool. Yeah, so lots of stuff happening in the Passive House world, and we'll have a link to calendar items for the different things that are happening. Their upcoming kind of summits and symposia, for instance, by FIAS and the Passive House Network here in North America. And I know there's lots of stuff going on internationally. So in addition to that, at the Accelerator this coming week, we have on Passive House Accelerator Live, a really cool project here in Seattle called Hobson Place. And this is the first supportive housing passive house project, certainly in Seattle, and maybe much further afield, actually. So supportive housing means that it's both affordable. This is affordable housing for people who were recently homeless, and there's a bunch of social services that are also housed in the building. And this is a FIAS certified project with a team. All the team leads are women as well, which is really cool to see. And then on March 22nd, we have the Passive Prefab Summit. So this is a Passive House Summit that we're hosting. Mary James is putting this together, and the theme is From Design to Delivery. So we're really looking forward to that as well. It's great to be doing another special summit event at the Accelerator. And then on March 29th, we're going to be joined by Lloyd Alter, the writer with Tree Hugger, and also the author of the book that just came out, The 1.5 Degree Lifestyle. He will be doing a little bit of a reading and lecture about the book, and then also we'll be joined by Monty Paulson and Susan Rowley, both Canadians, who will be doing a little panel discussion with him afterward, and then we'll have a lively Q&A. And then on March 31st, we're joined by Rockwell North America for a Passive House Component Spotlight. So it's going to be, there's lots coming up. It's going to be good.
Lots indeed. Awesome. Thank you for that, Zach.
Absolutely. Thank you,
I think
Matthew.
That's a wrap for this week. We've got a couple of other interviews lined up, so looking forward to those. And we'll be back again next week.
Awesome. Thanks, Matthew.
Cheers.